Good afternoon and welcome to Sports Talk here on Love 101. I am Daniel Blake. Thank you so much for joining me. It is February 19, which means almost into March. I feel like I just restarted the show in January. Like, seriously, I don't know if it's because of the pandemic, but this year it seemed to be moving pretty fast. No lie. Or maybe it's just me. It could be just me. Maybe other people have been complaining that the year lasts too long so far. Because usually January is extremely long. Like by the time you get to January 10, it feels like February 8. But January, to me, January seemed like it go by fast. And February just start last week. And it's almost done. But anyways, let me just tell you that Sports Talk is brought to you by the Jamaica Customs Agency, Country Above Self, and the Accountant General's Department, service with excellence, touching the life of every Jamaican. Big up everybody listening on their radio. But as always, remember, you can be on the go. You don't need to stay home or stay in the car. You can move and listen to the show, the Love 101 FM app in the Google Play or the App Store. Type in Love 101, boom, download the app, boom, listen live, and then you will hear me. So don't worry about it. Or if you're kind of stubborn like that, and you just don't bother want to download nothing, just go in your internet browser, love101.org, and you can listen to me live there. Or for all my friends watching on Facebook and YouTube. Hi, good afternoon. And thank you for everyone who joins week in, week out on the Facebook and the YouTube stream, who leave comments, who like the video, everything week in, week out. I truly appreciate you. Big you up. You deserve all that credit because I guess you have to keep the show on air. So thank you so much for that. All right. And remember, you can WhatsApp me at any time. 876-997-3125. 876-997-3125. For the people who like when you join up numbers, like when people tell you that their number is 98 32 46 12 or something like that. Yeah. So for those people who like to hear numbers like that, it's 997 3125, if that makes it simple for you. So you can WhatsApp me. We're going to have one of the best sports medicine experts in Jamaica. He'll be joining us. So if you have questions related to sports medicine, to athletes' health, those type of things, I can read the questions that you send in the WhatsApp or in the comments. So you can do that. We'll also be hearing from Novak Djokovic. I personally didn't interview him, although I would have loved that. But we're going to hear from him very shortly, but that's after the break, so I'll explain after the break. All right. So before we get into the Danielog, as usual, I have my sports bits. So the sports bits are just basically a summary of the major sporting events or issues that happened during the week that you may or may not have heard. So here they are. I find a nice little stand for my laptop, so I don't need to be like holding it in the screen like that. Yeah. All right. So Jamaica's four-man bobsled team, they competed for the first time at the Winter Olympics since 1998. Remember, is 1998? Yeah. Remember they made history all those years ago. And they make a movie, Cool Runnings. Everybody know about that. Unfortunately, the squad comprising of Shanwin Stevens, Ashley Watson, Rolando Reed, and Matthew Wekpe, if I'm saying that right, they finished last, unfortunately, among the 28 teams. They still sort of have a chance, The ice is cold. Like what them say, the ball is round, ice is cold. So maybe they still have a chance. And the final two heats are tonight at 8:30. You can watch it on TV. Don't ask me where. For obvious reasons, I can't tell you where, but I am sure that if you scroll through, especially during your sports section, you'll be able to find it. Speaking of last, the West Indies suffered yet another defeat at the hands of India after going down by 8 runs in the second T20 on Friday, chasing 187 to win. They fell short at 178 for three, with Jamaican Rovman Powell leading the way with 68. The West Indies lost the first T20 earlier in the week, which means India have won the three-match series. And the final match of the series is set for tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. So, yeah, West Indies keep losing. The Jamaica Scorpions, or local cricket team, local franchise team, I should say, they went down by 10 wickets to the Barbados Pride in the regional four-day competition on Friday. So they are now winless in their first two matches. The world's fastest woman alive, Elaine Thompson-Hera, continued her winning form on the track earlier this morning. She captured the women's 60 meters in Birmingham at the fifth leg of the World Indoor Tour Gold Series. She clocked 7.08 seconds ahead of Switzerland's Kambunji and Great Britain's Daryl Nita. Meanwhile, Stephanie Ann McPherson, she set an indoor PB of 51.39 seconds to win the women's 400 meters. And Natoya Gould, who ran a national indoor record and then were leading time in the 800 meters earlier this week, she finished third. And our Olympic bronze medalist Ronald Levy finished eighth in the men's 60-meter hurdles. And finally, Shericka Jackson, she created history this week, becoming Scotiabank Jamaica's first ever brand ambassador. Remember, she won 3 medals, including 1 gold at the Tokyo Olympics last year. She has signed a 3-year deal with Scotiabank. So thank you so much, Scotia, for sponsoring our athletes. Hopefully, she won't be your last brand ambassador. All right, so it's time to get into the Daniel log.
Hi, this is David Blake.
This is Hope Blake.
I am Ariel Brown Blake.
I'm here to tell you right now.
It's time for the Daniel log.
The Daniel log.
The Daniel log.
I love it.
Presented by no one.
Yeah, so one thing that I don't think that they complain about it. I think that them just notice it. My family, including my wife, they realize that I play FIFA a lot, which is, for those who don't know, it's a football video game that I play on my PlayStation on a regular basis. I don't play it while she is there, but you know, when I have that free time, I do play it, and I play it a lot, but that's not the point. So one thing I love about FIFA is that I'm in control, meaning I can literally pick my own team and I can select any player I want to play for my team. So I can literally put everybody together if I wanted. I could put the best players in the world together if I wanted to, right? So this weekend is the NBA All-Star Weekend, right? So the NBA All-Star Weekend is where the best players in the NBA come together and, you know, compete in an exhibition game. So it's for charity, but it's amazing. So tomorrow is the main game, Team LeBron versus Team Durant. Kevin Durant, one of the best players in the NBA, he won't be able to play because he's injured, but the NBA has a whole host of stars which we will see tomorrow in action. And I really love the All-Star game because it's not every day that you get to see the best players play together. Usually it's a rivalry, but they're now coming together. Imagine LeBron James, Steph Curry, and Giannis Antetokounmpo, multiple MVPs, NBA champions, everything. Imagine them playing on the same team. It don't matter if it's an exhibition match. Like, that is something that I want to see personally, because that That interests me. You want to see the best players not only on the field, but imagine them playing together. It's going to be beautiful. So, growing up and even to this day, I wonder what if football had an all star game? I know that the MLS, Major League Soccer in America, has an all star game, but uh, it's they try, but it's not a spectacle because those aren't the best players in the world. You get what I'm saying? It's just the best players who are currently playing in America, versus whichever team they find to play. But what if either FIFA, UEFA, or whichever organization came together and said, let's have an all star game where we have the best players in the world coming together? So imagine seeing Messi and Ronaldo on the same team. Ooh, instead of debating, even though it would be for charity. Ooh, Messi and Ronaldo on the same team? Oh, come on. Salah and Neymar, Lewandowski and Mbappe, Van Dijk and Chiellini. Or imagine even a little further back in the day. Imagine Ronaldinho, Lampard, Zidane, Gerrard, all of them on the same team. And bear in mind, I'm basically calling mostly attacking players. But still, that would be a real spectacle. I know that they have so many competitions that they try to get people interested in, like the Club World Cup, which isn't all that interesting, to be very honest with you. But if they manage to arrange like an all-star game, it would not only be one of the most watched games in sports, but it would raise millions for charity. Sponsors would go crazy. The best players in the world right now coming together, playing together. Oh my gosh. Stop the debating about Messi and Ronaldo. Don't you want to see them play together? Like, that's what I want to see. I don't want to see Chelsea play Palmeiras in a FIFA Club World Cup. I don't necessarily want to see pointless Nations League games. Yeah. All right, let me not say that they're pointless, but not all of them are very interesting. What if FIFA could create a international break or an all-star break and choose some of the best players in the world to play together? Yo, that would be crazy. That would be sick. Like, I know this might sound controversial, but I think that may be more watched than even a World Cup final. I know that sounds stupid, but fans have individual players that they love, right? And everybody would, for example, love a Ronaldo Messi debate. If you put 22 of the best players in the world on the same field at once, playing against each other for exhibition where them can show off them skills and everything, oh my gosh, that would be crazy. But that's just wishful thinking. But if it ever happens, I will save up my money and go. So FIFA, UEFA, whichever major sponsor, if you can make it happen, this Jamaican would be so, so happy. All right, so that was my Daniel log for this week. We're going to head into a break. And when we come back, we're going to be hearing from world tennis superstar Novak Djokovic.
Listeners, do you want to learn how to be healthy? Then join Complete Healing Gospel Medical Missionary Training, January 28 to February 27. Learn about natural remedies for diabetes, hypertension, female disorders, kidney diseases, and so much more. WhatsApp us today for more information. 876-238-0288 or 876-781-1197. A blessing awaits you.
Bashko time. All the things that you need for your home with prices so low, you would never need a loan at Bashko. At Bashko. Appliances, house with furniture and rugs, east side linens and glass and mugs at Bashko. You're shopping at Bashko. Whether the north or south, in the east and the west, Bashko, them all over, they must be the best at Bashko. At Bashko. You're shopping at Bashko. At Bashko. Giving you more.
Welcome back to Sports Talk right here on Love 101. It is February 19. All right, so Novak Djokovic, one of the best tennis players of all time, world number one. Remember, he has had some issues over the last few months, most recently with the Australian Open. So remember, he thought he could compete in the Australian Open, got an exemption because he wasn't vaccinated. But the Australian government and himself were basically in a legal battle for maybe almost a week. And in the end, Djokovic had to leave Australia and he wasn't allowed to play. And he's still not vaccinated, which means that he could miss out on future tournaments and possibly the chance to be known as the GOAT of tennis. So he broke his silence this week. He spoke to the BBC about, that entire Australian Open situation, remaining firm in his vaccine stance, and if he's truly willing to give up the chance to be the greatest player of all time. So let's hear that one.
I'm not here to sympathize with you, but I do want to understand you better. And I can imagine, listening to you, that your experience in that detention hotel was far from pleasant. Could you just talk us through what it was like?
Well, definitely it wasn't pleasant, but, I don't want to be sitting here and complaining about conditions in that detention center because I stayed 7 days.
Did you feel powerless?
Yes, I did feel powerless. When I arrived, I was not allowed to use my phone for 3-4 hours. It was the middle of the night from 1 a.m. to 9 a.m. Didn't get any sleep because I was going through questioning every 30 minutes, basically. I had many interviews that were started and then stopped and then paused, and then I waited for the person to speak to his superiors, and he would come back, and it went on for the entire night. The visa was reinstated, first revoked, then reinstated, then revoked again. So I was free for 4 days, and I was training, but it was not a regular kind of training days that I would normally have prior to the Grand Slam competition. I had helicopters flying, above every single training session that I had on Rod Laver Arena, cameras all over the place. Also my colleagues, and that really hurt me a lot, because I felt that energy and those looks from my colleagues and people that were in the tennis facility. And obviously I understand that they had a perception that was based on what they were seeing from media reports, and I wasn't going out in media because of what I previously said, and respecting the legal process and respect.
What would you say to the ordinary Australian listening to you now, who has endured immense sacrifices and restrictions on their liberty over the past couple of years, but who looks at you and says, based on what they see in the news, this guy thinks he's above the law. He thinks that he doesn't have to abide by the same rules as everyone else.
Australia has been through one of the most severe lockdowns that we had since the beginning of the pandemic. So I can only imagine how hard it was for Australians, and I sympathize, empathize with all the people. And I understand that there has been lots of, say, frustrations from Australian people towards me and towards the entire situation and the way it was dealt with. And I understand it as well. Reading the newspapers, you get certain conclusions. But I would like to say that I always follow the rules. And the circular email that was sent to me and to all the athletes that were potentially going to Australia, I received it, and there was a possibility for medical exemption. And I was ready not to go to Australia. I mean, as much as I love the country, and I always looked forward to go to Australian summer and participate in Australian Open, it was a very difficult decision for me, because I understood that with the decision that I made, there's going to be consequences, and that consequence is me not going to Australia. And I was ready.
I really want to understand your thinking behind that decision. Just before we get on to that, on this subject of the rules. So when the Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison says there should be no special rules for Novak Djokovic, you agree with him?
I agree that there shouldn't be any special rules. I never used my privileged status to get into Australia by force or do anything in this entire process. So I was treated as anybody else, really. And as I mentioned, the circular email that my team has received was sent to all the athletes, both male and female, both qualifications and main draws. So it was hundreds of tennis players receiving that email. So we were following the rules. And when there was a possibility for a medical exemption, I was using that, and I applied, and I put forward my PCR test, my sufficient amount of antibodies that I had at the time, and I got accepted and approved by two independent Australian medical panels anonymously. I think it's important to mention, and my name was not on the application.
Because this is an important point, which a lot of people may not know, which is that your actual medical application, your medical exemption, was anonymous, and it was accepted by two independent Australian panels, and that's separate to the travel declaration, which we had a human error, which we may come on to.
Absolutely. It was the visa declaration error was not deliberately made. It was accepted and confirmed by the federal court and the minister himself and the Ministry for Immigration in Australia. So actually, what people probably don't know is that I was not deported from Australia on the basis that I was not vaccinated, or I broke any rules, or that I made an error in my visa declaration. All of that was actually confirmed and approved and validated by the Federal Court of Australia and the Ministry for Immigration. The reason why I was deported from Australia was because the Minister for Immigration used his discretional right to cancel my visa based on his perception that I might create some anti-vax sentiment in the country or in the city, which I completely disagree with.
And that you are potentially a threat to public health. I looked online just this morning before coming here to your tennis centre at some of the coverage of this whole saga. And one of the main arguments of your critics is that it's awfully convenient that you got this COVID infection in mid-December, because that's the only way you got to play at the Australian Open. What would you say to those critics?
I would say that I take COVID very, very seriously, as really anybody else. And I assure you that I was taking PCR tests as anybody else. I never used my privileged status in this country or any other country. And I was tested hundreds and hundreds of times since the beginning of pandemic, because that was required in order to travel and in order to, do my job as a tennis player. So, I understand that there is a lot of criticism, and I understand that people come out with different theories on how lucky I was or how convenient it is. But, no one is lucky and really convenient of getting COVID. You would agree, Amal. I mean,
you've had it twice.
Millions of people have and are still struggling, with COVID around the world. So I take this very seriously. I really don't like someone thinking I've misused something or in my own favor in order to, get a positive PCR test, eventually go to Australia. As you mentioned, I had COVID twice. The second time was asymptomatic. The first time was about year and a half ago, and I had symptoms, and it wasn't easy.
Received any vaccination against COVID?
I have not.
Why?
I understand that and support fully the freedom to choose, whether you want to get vaccinated or not. And I have not spoken about this before, and I have not disclosed my medical record and my vaccination status because I had the right to keep that private and discreet. But as I see, there's a lot of wrong conclusions and assumptions out there. I think it's important to speak up about that and justify certain things, right? So I was never against vaccination. I understand that globally everyone is trying to put a big effort into handling this virus and seeing hopefully an end soon to this virus. And vaccination is probably the biggest effort that was made. Probably half of the planet was vaccinated. And I fully respect that. But I've always represented and always supported the freedom to choose what you put into your body. And for me, that is essential. It's really the principle of understanding what is right and what is wrong for you. And me as an elite professional athlete, I've always carefully reviewed, assessed everything that comes in from the supplements, food, the water that I drink or sports drinks, anything really that comes into my body as a fuel. Based on all the informations that I got, I decided not to take the vaccine as of today.
So do you have, as of today?
Yes, I keep my mind open because we are all trying to find collectively a best possible solution to end COVID, right? I mean, no one really wants to be in this kind of situation that we've been in collectively for 2 years. I'm part of the sport, a very global sport that is played every single week in a different location. So, I understand the consequences of my decision. And one of the consequences of my decision was not going to Australia, and I was prepared not to go. And I understand that not being vaccinated today, I'm unable to travel to most of the tournaments at the moment.
And that's a price you're willing to pay?
That is the price that I'm willing to pay.
Ultimately, are you prepared to forego the chance to be the greatest player that ever picked up a racket, statistically? Because you feel so strongly about this jab?
Yes. I do.
But as things stand, if this means that you miss the French Open, is that a price you'd be willing to pay?
Yes, that is the price that I'm willing to pay.
And if it means that you miss Wimbledon this year, again, that's a price you're willing to pay?
Yes.
Why, Novak? Why?
Because the principles of decision-making on my body are more important than any title or anything else. I'm trying to be in tune with my body as much as I possibly can.
What do you say directly to anti-vaccination campaigners around the world who proudly declare Novak Djokovic is one of us?
I say that everyone has the right to choose to act or say whatever they feel is appropriate for them. And I have never said that I'm part of that movement. No one in the whole process during Australian saga has asked me on my stance or my opinion on vaccination. No one. So I could not really express, what I feel and where my stance is, neither in the legal process, neither outside. So it's really unfortunate that there has been this kind of misconception and wrong conclusion that has been made around the world based upon, something.
So that was Novak Djokovic talking about his entire incident at the Australian Open, his current stance on vaccination and his, I guess, his firm belief that he's willing to give up all that success for his beliefs. Whether you agree with it or not, at least he's consistent and he understands the consequences of his actions. So, yeah. So we'll see if things change, if he gets the right info and says, you know what, I'm going to actually take this vaccine and I'm going to play again, or if we'll probably never see him until those type of restrictions are lifted. But it's just a bit of a shame not to see one of the best players play the sport he loves, you know. All right, so we are going into yet another break. We'll be back with more sports talk.
Hey, my peeps, get this on the regular. Your HIV status, if you consider, the least you ever test once a year. Just 15 minutes and your status clear. Cause it might not show up on your timeline and you learn too late, so you're out of time. A progressive future, mandatory, real long life, our story. You hear?
Remember, update your status in a real life. Do a HIV test today.
Just 15 minutes and your status clear. Real long life, our story. Real long life for youth, coming from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
It's a good thing to get the third party, brata.
Third-party car insurance just got a whole lot better at Key Insurance. Just add Brata to your third-party motor insurance policy and get collision coverage for your vehicle plus protection to the other driver. Request the quote online at keyinsurancejm.com or call 888-CALL-KEY. It's a third-party Brata. Extra protection, extra savings, and extra peace of mind. Conditions apply.
Well, Digicel, connect! Alright, connect with Brata. Digicel, Digi7-day Brata data can't done. Look on data, good data. No for you and not spot for your neighbor. Look on data, good data. Entertainment and the go, why wait till later? Connect with Brata. Digicel, Digi7-day Brata data can't done.
Data can't done! With Digicel 7-day Prime Brata bundle, enjoy Netflix, TikTok, Insta, Facebook, YouTube, and more. Activate your Prime Brata bundle by dialing *147*7 number sign from your Digicel phone. Digicel, better together. Made in Jamaica.
Digicel, bong bong.
It's calling me deep. Minister Latoya HD presents Heart Cry Worship Experience Immersion, Saturday, February 26, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. with speakers Joan Davis Williams, Minister Jody McCullough, Bishop Courtney McLean, Travell Clark Wine, Othniel Lewis, Ishmael Preston, and the psalmists Alicia Taylor and Dawn Martin. Hosted by Kareem Haynes and Nadine Blair. Register now at spuropen.com/heartcry. Join us for a day of growth, pouring in for you to pour out, a day of immersion. Call 876-539-8714 or email heartcryworshipce@gmail.com. Heartcry Worship Experience, Saturday. Health and Wellness invites members of the public to attend a vaccination site Saturday, February 19 or Sunday, February 20 to receive their first, second, or booster dose of the AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson vaccine for persons 18 years or older. Jamaicans 12 years and older will be offered the Pfizer vaccine. Adults 18 years and older will be offered the Sinopharm vaccine. Here are the sites for Saturday, February 19. Kingston and St. Andrew, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. St. Joseph's Hospital, Dehaney Park Health Center, Harborview Health Center, Fontana Pharmacy, Barbican and Waterloo, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. In St. Catherine, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Greater Portmore and St. Jago Park Health Centers, Old Harbor Civic Center, and Linstead Anglican Church. In Clarendon, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Maypen Hospital Vaccination Center in Westmoreland, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Shoppers Fair Car Park, Mobile Outreach, Royal Medical Center, Savlamar Central Medical Center. In St. James, Montego Bay Comprehensive Health Center Type 5, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. In Hanover, Lucy Health Center, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Persons should take their vaccination card, a government-issued ID, or letter from a justice of the peace to the sites. Let's get vaccinated and get back to life.
You voted in round 1 and 2, and now is the time for the revelation of the top 10 local songs and the top 3 international songs as voted by you or faithful listeners. Be sure to listen to this Saturday, February 19 at 5 p.m. in Gospel Faves during Youth Connection with DJ Rebirth. You'll get to hear how the votes went and if your pick made it to the listeners' pick for top 10 hits for 2021. Remember now, Saturday, February 19 at 5 p.m. on the Family Station. Love 101.
Covering Jesus, a witch falling rebirth. We now hide and talk.
Welcome back to Sports Talk right here on Love 101. It is 1:38 p.m. We just have about 12 minutes? No, it's not 12, it's 22 minutes. Don't ask me my CSEC math score grade because it wasn't all that great. All right, so I know that we usually speak about athletes' health and the roles of sports physicians and sports doctors and the importance of sports medicine and sports science. So right now, I am joined by Dr. Kevin Jones, who is currently the president of the Jamaica Association of Sports Medicine. Dr. Jones, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Mr. Blake. Just a correction, I'm the immediate past president. The elections were
immediate past president.
Right.
Wow.
I'm the immediate past president.
Okay. Definitely got some wrong information there. But nonetheless, you definitely have experience there. So before I get into like the main questions, if you could just like briefly explain the role of the association, because maybe not a lot of people will know about it.
Okay, well, the association is a group of volunteers, volunteer medical professionals with specializations in different areas of sports or in the management of sporting injuries. So it includes doctors, physiotherapists, athletic trainers, massage therapists, nurses, and join as well. It actually also includes physical education teachers and other persons involved in sports education. Nutritionists are also a part of the association. So it's conglomerate of multiple different specialties, all geared towards optimizing the entire athletic performance or the athletic experience, from I guess nutrition to training to injury treatment and rehab and recovery.
So Dr. Jones, we are in year 3 of the pandemic. How difficult has it been for yourself and for your colleagues, managing, doing what you're doing on a regular basis, but also treating the athletes with all those protocols and those things in place?
Okay, well, good question. Well, for all persons in the health profession, as you must recognize, our lives have not really changed in the sense that patients still get injuries, they still have trauma, accidents on the road. Those haven't gone home. People still getting shot, stabbed. People still getting sick, diabetics, hypertensive, and so forth. People with urological problems. So our jobs have not really changed. The pandemic has not changed people getting ill and needing treatment. And then for those of us involved in sports medicine, remember that this is a lot of us is that it's just an extension of our normal work. So so it's been trying, because we've been asked to pretty much perform normally at job while living abnormally outside with curfews and so forth. Although we do get exemptions, we are allowed on the road at odd hours and so forth and things. But a lot of places aren't open when we are on the road, So there have been situations where we have missed simple things like the supermarket or the bank or whatever because we have either been operating or caught up treating patients. So we have had to try and function normally and provide a normal service while everything else around us is abnormal, So even though we're on the road after hours, everywhere is closed. So it's not like we can go to the supermarket when it's closed or to the bank and so forth. So thank God for online platforms and ATMs and so forth. So that's kind of what it has been for us. So in terms of like the athletes now, there hasn't been that much competition. We've been trying to give advice as to, from the pandemic started, we as in the Sports Med Association had actually put out we had put out guides to the return to sport from the first few months of the pandemic as to which sports were considered safe to go back into while still obeying all the various COVID protocols, and which sports would need special arrangements made to allow them to go back to normal activities. Some of the recommendations were adapted by the J3s and ISA in terms of for their protocols and for the execution of track meets and so forth. And then the bobsled and skeletal federation, when they were going to Canada, we had worked with Nelson Stokes, with Chris Stokes, in how they would say for them to travel to Canada, how they should be housed and so forth. And based on that, they were accepted to go and train in Canada before the Olympics. This was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So we're trying to guide different sporting groups as to how they could safely go back to competition and dispel allegations of with some reasons why everybody was saying that horse racing was a political thing. But the truth is that horse racing, you're not catching COVID from horses, and it's a socially distant sport, a horse is over 6 feet tall, so there, and so it was actually pretty safe for horse racing to go back. It was also pretty safe for a lot of other sports to go back. Not all of which our advice was taken, and a lot of sports that should be able to continue safely have not. So it's been
more. So more sports and competitions have been getting the green light from the government recently. Fans have also been returning to events. Does that concern you, especially with the fact that, the Prime Minister says that some of these restrictions and curfews may no longer be a thing in the coming weeks? Does that concern you that we are moving too fast, or are you in agreement with sports, fully reopening in the next, few weeks?
Well, I'll be honest, I don't think we're been moving too fast. I honestly think we have been moving too slow, based on because it's not a far cry to see where certain sports can go back safely, because the nature of the sport obeys all the basic premises that exist to help prevent the spread of COVID. So things like racket sports, like badminton and tennis, those could have gone back pretty much right away because they are socially distant sports. All you have to ensure that you do is sanitize in between. You're touching the ball and so on. Once you're not touching one of your mucous membranes, which can contract the COVID, because you won't get it through your hands. You get it when you touch your eyes, your nose, your mouth, and stuff, and your genitals. Actually, that's when you're going to catch it. So those sports, motor racing, go-kart racing, swimming, all of those sports, it was safe for them to go back from day one, because like I said, they're socially distanced. There's been no evidence to show that COVID has been is transmitted in swimming pools, and they actually include hot tubs and other large bodies of water. So all of those actually could have gone back from quite early, while being COVID protocols, and were a lot safer than people going to the supermarket, where social distancing a lot of time is not obeyed. There's multiple touching of the different things on the shelf, for people taking things off the shelf and putting them back. It's not like they're wiping down every bag of rice somebody picks up and puts back, or every bit of fruit and so forth. So for a lot of sports, it was actually quite safe for them to go back from early. So I actually think we moved too slowly, especially because some sports were, like I said, the social distance sports were pretty straightforward. The contact sports, and it's also all put out in our manual, in our recommendations. The contact sports, football, netball, basketball, volleyball to an extent, because when you're at the net blocking, you're face to face and so forth. Those needed more stricter protocols in terms of like vaccinations, negative PCR tests and so forth to reduce the risk of spread there. But for the socially distanced sports, they could have gone back from 2 years ago. So it's good to see that we're finally getting on board with that. Spectators in the stands, you work out your venue sizes and how many spectators can be safely allowed to be socially distanced, and that's also can work just fine. So so it's good that it's happening. It's just a matter of being relative protocols at the different events. So I just think that it's a bit late, but better late than never.
Yeah, that's that is true. I know either last year or maybe 2020, you had said that athletes should be on the lookout for the long-term effects of COVID-19, warning the public that these effects could be with them for a while. Have you personally seen it, or have you heard any of your colleagues of any athletes who have suffered or are suffering from these long-term effects, or is it just a case where it's business as usual?
Okay, well, yes, at a joint webinar at the Jamaica Association of Sports Players that did with GC Foster in terms, I think it was last year, April, we had spoken about that in terms of return to sports and the different things to look forward to. And it all depending on how severe the person got COVID. For people who just had mild upper respiratory tract symptoms, the return to sports was just gradual. Every 2 weeks being symptom free before they recommend that you go back, and then you gradually work yourself back in. Go back in full throttle. You gradually work yourself back in. But for individuals who may have had more severe consequences of COVID, such as respiratory issues, heart issues, and so forth, that might have been admitted to intensive care and so forth. Those were the ones that you may have needed to have done relevant investigations, such as electrocardiograms of the heart, or echocardiograms of the heart, or a magnetic resonance imaging of the heart, to determine their risk in terms of returning to sport. But for the most of the cases that have been mild, all those deep investigations were not necessary. And locally, I have not heard of any. I know a couple athletes who had COVID who actually went to the Olympics and performed well. They had it before, and they went to the Olympics and performed well, but they didn't have any major symptoms. And I don't know of any patients, athletes locally, who have had any of these, what they call long COVID symptoms. There are a couple of people in the States. There's a female, I think she ran 800 meters, I don't remember her name right now, in the States, she's a basketball player, who hasn't been able to return to the WNBA because of long COVID symptoms. So there are those athletes out there, but none that I know of locally. And I know personally a couple who had contracted COVID prior to the Olympics, who went to the Olympics and did quite well. So I haven't seen any of that locally. I don't know if any of my colleagues have seen any of that locally.
Okay. I don't want to say COVID aside, because we're still in the pandemic, but not recently, but in the last maybe year or so, I had a discussion with my colleague, and we were noticing that with all the increase in the advancement of sports medicine and sports science, that it seems athletes are getting more major injuries than before. So a lot of ACL tears, MCL tears, much more damage to tendons and muscles. What would you say would be the cause of the increase in injuries like these? Do you think that athletes are pushing themselves too much? Is it that their nutrition isn't matching their workout regime? What would you say would lead to more of those major injuries?
Okay, so you think your perception is that major injuries have increased locally, or you're talking globally?
No, globally,
Globally. All right.
Yeah.
Well, we have to be careful nowadays, especially because with the onset of social media and so forth, everything is almost immediately available. And then athletes, whereas medical information is privileged and so forth, athletes are posting their medical conditions as soon as they have it, videos of themselves being treated and what is going to be done. And then people start to make comments about what the doctors are doing and not doing and so forth. So I've seen that. So we have to be careful. I don't know if there's been an increase. I'd have to see what the epidemiologists have to say about that. But it would appear so, just based on what is being reported. I think it's that information that's more readily available.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's not uncommon. That's like in the National Football League, the injuries that have been happening. I don't think there's any necessarily major increase in the number of like ACL injuries and so forth and thing. So in the main thing is prevention, though, is that some injuries are associated with just repetitive activity over an extended period of time. And a lot of Achilles problems that may eventually go on to rupture. Achilles tendonitis may eventually go on to rupture. Just the tendonitis alone can keep an athlete out. So like when Kevin Durant ruptured his Achilles, Kobe had ruptured his Achilles back in the day. So a lot of that was, and then Klay Thompson ruptured his Achilles. He also had an ACL and so forth. So a lot of that was always there, but I just think that the increased number of games and competitions and so forth, along with training, does increase the underlying inflammatory conditions of these tendons and so forth, which can increase the risk of injury. So I don't think it has anything to do with nutrition, because nutrition has been significantly improved over the years, and accessibility to different types of nutrition. So it's so I figure it's just the level of training, the intensity, and the number of games and competitions that people are being involved in. I think it's just more of that, just increasing the risk of these major injuries, and that the whole that social media and media on a whole, because it's not just social, but the more radio stations, the more TV stations and so forth, and athletes putting their information out there that we know about these. But I'm not so sure if it's that much that is increased, but it probably has a lot to do with just increased competition and increased intensity of training and trying to achieve the next level.
Yeah. Locally, in the past, we, sports fans and even associations were concerned that many of our athletes weren't matriculating into the senior programs well, and they would eventually fade out. And the overwork issue came up. I know that ISA tried to correct that by making sure that athletes could only participate in probably, I think it's 3 events or so at champs.
Yeah, 1 relay.
Yes.
3 events, whether it be a relay or whatever, but 3 events.
Yes. But we still see a bit of a struggle in terms of that, and a lot of our junior athletes are suffering constant injuries. Do you think the coaches, the schools, and even the young athletes themselves, do you think that they need more education, or is it that some of these coaches and schools are just not following what the advice of yourself and your colleagues and so forth?
I think it's a little bit of pretty much everything that you have mentioned. A lot of other coaches know better, and the Jamaica Association of Sports Medicine has reached out to schools, to coaches. We've had all free talks to all these different groups to try and educate them on kind of, especially in high school athletes, where less is actually more, actually better. There's an athlete that I used to help. I've tried to say as little as possible, I don't know who, but I remember one season she competed twice before champs because of an ankle she was having, and then she won champs and broke 2 national records, and then went on and won at the world youth and the world junior level. But her season was she only competed at 2 meets, for the year, and one of them was champs, and that was based on her injury. So with high school athletes, you really shouldn't train them as adults because their growth hormone levels, their testosterone levels, all their anabolic hormone levels, the natural ones, are higher than they are in somebody who is not growing. And just by being alive, if they do nothing at all apart from get up and eat and go to the road and come back, they get stronger and tall and heavier, whatever. So especially at that level, training should be more about learning the proper techniques and doing things properly to reduce injury. And the resistance work shouldn't be where you have a kid trying to max out on a maximum weight. You should just gradually increase the weight over time at 2-week intervals. They will get strong and they will achieve the goals. You shouldn't have them do try to do a 1 max weight, because it increases the risk of them damaging their growth plates and their tendons and so forth. So and we have tried to transmit this message, and it's a bit frustrating because we see it a lot of times. We see the same athletes coming into the medical room for treatment. A lot of time we make recommendations and they're ignored. So between coaches, sometimes it's eager parents trying to achieve the best so that they can reap the rewards of their child's success, which comes in multiple forms. The schools and the school quote-unquote management team, which includes teachers, coaches, parents, and other alumni of the school who have an interest in the sport. All of those factors play in to a child athlete being overworked and being pushed beyond a level that is good towards their overall state of health, their overall state of physical health.
Yeah, Dr. Jones, I have less than a minute, so I'm going to make this my final question. We know that financially the recovery and rehab process is quite expensive. Do you think that maybe the government, corporate companies, the medical insurance type companies, do you think that they should provide either funding or some subsidy to help out the athletes who represent us on a world stage?
All right, a good question, and a question that has been out there for a while. So quickly, the government has a program in with insurance program for the professional athletes. At the high school level, there is none though, and that depends on the school that athletes are at. 2 years ago at our conference, I put forward a proposal which was not new, but was just modified from what used to happen before, where members of the association who work in the public hospitals see athletes and treat them through the public system. And since healthcare in Jamaica is free, that wouldn't really be of any additional cost to the government. And I put forward figures and so forth to show how feasible it was for the government to try and subsidize a separate program. So what I'm thinking is going to be extremely challenging, extremely expensive. So what we have to do is look at what we have and optimize it so it can best serve the athletes. And what we have public hospitals, we have trained professionals in these hospitals with equipment, physiotherapy departments and so forth, and we optimize that. We could channel all our athletes through various orthopedic services at these public hospitals where they could be seen for free, and I do some. That's what I actually do in Mandeville. I'd see the athletes from Clarendon, Manchester, and St. Elizabeth, and in fact, athletes from as far as Westmoreland and St. James, from coaches, because when I used to coach, from coaches I know send the athletes down there to be at times as well, and that's free of cost. The rehab though, from there they have to work it out with somebody in their area. But if most public hospitals have a physical therapy unit with equipment, and if we were to optimize that, the cost factors for the government would be less than trying to set up something new and separate. And like I said, we presented that at our conference, but to date, nobody has really taken it on.
Well, I'm hoping that they do in the future. Dr. Jones, thank you so much for lending us your time and for all that feedback. And hopefully we'll speak again soon about some more issues. So thank you so much.
You're welcome, man. Thanks for having me.
All right. So that was Dr. Kevin Jones, immediate past president of the Jamaica Association of Sports Medicine. That is it for today. I've gone over just a little bit, but I hope that you enjoyed the show. Sports Talk brought to you by the Jamaica Customs Agency and the Accountant General's Department. Remember to join me next week, same time, 1 to 2 p.m., and we'll have more riveting discussions. I am Daniel Blake. Please take care and have a great weekend.